We're surrounded by things so common that we never stop to ask who actually invented them. You hit the gym and break a sweat on a treadmill. You buy a chainsaw to cut down an old tree in your backyard. You put on high heels for a date or an important meeting. And every morning you rinse with mouthwash. But what if I told you that the treadmill was once considered an unbearable instrument of torture, that high heels were invented by tough, brutal warriors, and the chainsaw? The chainsaw was originally created by doctors to assist in childbirth. So get comfortable. Today, we're looking at the hidden side of the most ordinary objects. And believe me, after this video, you'll never look at your daily routine the same way again. Let's start with the most hardcore one, the chainsaw. When we see a chainsaw, we picture rugged lumberjacks in flannel shirts, or at the very least, characters from a Hollywood horror movie. But the real history of this tool is far more terrifying than any film. Let's head back to late 18th century Scotland. Imagine medicine back then. No antibiotics, no sterile environments, and most importantly, no proper anesthesia. In that era, childbirth was an incredibly dangerous process. A C-section was considered a last resort and almost a guaranteed death sentence for the mother. But what did doctors do if the baby was too large and got stuck? They had to resort to a gruesome procedure called a symphysiectomy. In plain English, it was the surgical cutting of the cartilage and pelvic bones to widen the birth canal. For a long time, surgeons did this using a standard medical knife or a small handsaw. It was an agonizingly slow process that caused unbearable pain. Then, in 1780, two Scottish doctors, John Aitken and James Jeffrey, came up with a brilliant idea to speed things up. They took a watch chain, soldered tiny sharp teeth onto it, and stretched it over a metal frame with a handle. The handle had to be cranked rapidly to make the serrated chain rotate. They called the tool an osteotome. And yes, folks, this is absolute historical fact. The prototype of the chainsaw was invented to saw through human bone. Believe it or not, it actually worked. The surgery became much faster, which saved countless lives. The tool was constantly refined, and it wasn't until the early 20th century that someone thought of replacing the hand crank with a motor. A few decades later, a logger looked at this surgical device and thought, hey, this would be way more efficient for cutting down trees. The tool was scaled up, and the chainsaw left the hospital ward for the forest forever. Now, let's take a breath and talk about something you can find in almost every home, or at least in every gym: the treadmill. Anyone who's ever tried to drop a few pounds for summer knows the feeling. The treadmill is pure torture, and the irony is that's exactly what it was designed for. England, 1818. Victorian prisons were overcrowded. Prisoners were sitting idle in their cells, and the government felt they were having way too easy a time. So, an engineer named Sir William Cubitt decided that criminals should be punished with physically exhausting, monotonous, and ideally, completely pointless labor. He invented a machine called the treadmill, literally a stepping mill. It didn't look like today's moving belt. It was a giant wooden cylinder with steps, much like a water wheel. Prisoners stood in a row, gripping a handrail, and were forced to step upward indefinitely as the wheels sank under their weight. Imagine climbing a staircase to nowhere for 8 to 10 hours a day in a stuffy room with almost no breaks. These machines were sometimes used to grind grain or pump water, but the real goal was simple: to break the prisoner's spirit. Fun fact, even the famous writer Oscar Wilde had to serve his time on one of these when he was sent to prison. By the end of the 19th century, even the stern British society realized this was way too cruel. The Prison Act of 1898 officially banned the use of treadmills. The machine disappeared for decades. It wasn't until the 1960s when Dr. Kenneth Cooper proved the incredible benefits of aerobic exercise for heart health that engineers reimagined the old prison machine. They turned an instrument of torture into a trendy gadget worth thousands of dollars. The same gadget that sits in many of our homes today, mostly serving as a very expensive clothes rack.
Speaking of beauty and fitness, let's talk about fashion: high heels. Today, high heels are the ultimate symbol of femininity, elegance, and sophistication. But if you told that to someone from the past, they'd laugh in your face. Originally, women had nothing to do with heels at all. They were strictly men's footwear, practical, rugged, and very macho. It all started in 10th century Persia. Their cavalrymen, who were world-class archers, faced a serious problem. When they stood up in their stirrups at a full gallop to take a shot, their smooth boots would slip. This could cost a warrior his life. That's how the heel was born. It acted as a hook or a brake that locked into the stirrup, giving the rider perfect stability. In the late 16th century, the Persian Shah sent a diplomatic mission to Europe. When European aristocrats saw the rider's boots, they absolutely lost it. The heel became an instant symbol of masculinity and military prowess. King Louis XIV of France was especially fond of them. He was only 5'4", 163 centimeters, and to tower over his subjects, he started wearing 4-inch red heels. This became such a status symbol that the king even issued a decree. Only those in his inner circle had the right to wear red heels. But heels had another, less romantic use in Europe. Medieval streets had no sewage systems, and they were literally drowning in filth and grime. In city markets, heels were worn by ordinary butchers. The high soles were there for one reason only: to keep their feet from being soaked in the animal blood covering the slaughterhouse floors. Women didn't start wearing heels until much later. In an effort to appear more powerful and independent, they began adopting elements of the male wardrobe, smoking pipes, wearing men's hats, and of course, high-heeled shoes. Once men realized their exclusive footwear had become mainstream and feminine, they quickly abandoned it during the Enlightenment, switching to sensible flat shoes. And just like that, history flipped this trend completely upside down.
And finally, a story about the most brilliant manipulation in human history. Do you use mouthwash after brushing your teeth? If you do, you're the victim of some truly incredible marketing. In 1879, a powerful surgical antiseptic was invented and named Listerine after Joseph Lister, the pioneer of surgical sterility. The product was great, it killed bacteria instantly, but there was one problem. There weren't enough surgeons in the world to make the creators filthy rich. So they started selling their liquid to everyday people. For the next 40 years, they tried to hawk Listerine as basically anything. It was sold as a floor cleaner, a dandruff cure, a treatment for insect bites. They even tried using it to treat gonorrhea, but sales were still sluggish. Then in the 1920s, the company owners came up with a plan that would end up in every marketing textbook in history. They knew Listerine killed bacteria in the mouth, but how do you get people to gargle with a floor cleaner? You scare them. Marketers dug up an obscure Latin word from old medical books, halitosis, meaning bad breath. They launched an aggressive, terrifying ad campaign. Posters showed beautiful but lonely, sad women. The text read, "Always a bridesmaid, never a bride. She has halitosis." The company convinced millions of people that normal breath odor was a horrific social disease that would make you an outcast, keep you unemployed, and ensure you'd never get married. And then they offered the salvation, their antiseptic. Panic-stricken, people rushed to pharmacies. Listerine sales skyrocketed from $100,000 to $4 million in just a few years. Essentially, they didn't just sell a liquid, they invented a disease based on normal human physiology and then sold you the cure. These are the secrets hiding in your closet, your bathroom, or your garage. History loves to play tricks on us. We pay top dollar for former torture devices, we try to look feminine in boots made for Persian archers, and we freshen our breath with floor cleaner. Let me know in the comments, which stories surprised you the most? And be honest, did you have any idea what the chainsaw was originally for? If this video blew your mind as much as it did mine while I was researching it, hit that like button and make sure to subscribe to the channel.